Good afternoon and welcome to the Why Have a Career in the Wealth Management Industry webinar. Our speakers today is our own S.C. Jimerson and Annie Brown from T. Rowe Price. For your reference, all lines have been placed into a listen-only mode to prevent any background noise. If you would like to submit a question, please type it into the Q&A console located on your GoToWebinar panel. We will attempt to answer as many of your questions as possible during the Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties, please email envestnet.platform@envestnet.com for assistance. Again, that is envestnet.platform@envestnet.com for assistance. Additionally, we will be recording today's event and expect to make it available shortly after the session. I will now turn it over to Katie Yenowin to begin the webinar.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Women in Wealth Management Guest Speaker Series. This series brings recognized and accomplished individuals from the wealth and asset management industry to speak freely and informally about their journey and experiences. This forum allows our guests to educate, offer guidance, and advice in a career path that may seem unclear at times. Our speakers will prove to spark conversation and provide informative information to help support those considering a career in the wealth and asset management industry. Now I'm going to turn it over to S.C. Jimerson. She is the Managing Director, the Head of Asset Manager Network here at Envestnet, and also Annie Brown from T. Rowe Price. S.C.?
Thanks, Katie. And good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for calling into this. I am honored to have so many participants on this webinar, and I hope you get something out of it. So I thought what I would do is just very quickly lay out how this is going to go, and then we're just going to launch into this. So I have asked a good friend of mine, Annie Brown, she's the head of the broker-dealer channel at T. Rowe Price, to join me today. And the reason I asked her, aside from her being a good friend of mine, is because I wanted to show the different paths people could take in the wealth management, financial services space. So, you know, a lot of times, and I know this from talking to my kids and my kids' friends, a lot of time there's a perception of financial services as, you know, cutthroat, Wall Street, you know, kind of a tough field. And it really, for the most part, couldn't be more farther than that. And hopefully, as I talk through my background and my path to how I got where I am today, and once Annie does the same, I hope you'll be able to see really the wide opportunity that exists in financial services and wealth management, and hopefully you can better visualize the opportunities that are there, and the fact that it is just such a diverse field that hopefully you might be able to imagine yourself just a little bit better within this space. So without further ado, like I said, I'm going to get started. I'm going to briefly kind of talk you through my path. I'm going to turn it over to Annie. She's going to talk you through her path. And then Annie and I will have a couple of questions for each other. But you know what? If Annie and I don't get to ask each other any questions because you folks on the phone have questions for us, that will make my day. So I really, really, really encourage you guys on the phone, if you have any questions whatsoever, or even want to make a comment, please do so. I'm looking at the chat box here. I want to see questions from you guys. That'll make this whole thing so much better if we get some participation from students. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start pretty quickly by saying, you know, like so many of us in the financial services industry, I fell into this after school. So I did not grow up, you know, having dreams about one day being the head of the asset manager network at Envestnet, right? Like, who even knows about this stuff when you're growing up, right? But, you know, sending out resumes after school, I, got an interview with it was at the time an insurance company, and the job seemed interesting. So my very first job, actually, I spent my first 10 plus years in the retirement plan space. So very, very different than what I'm doing now. So I started with a company called the New England, and we handled employee benefits, health and welfare, and 401ks. And I was more on the 401k side. They sent me to training where I learned, presentation skills, all about 401k plans, all about, the law that governs 401k plans. And I was basically a client service rep that would handle 401k plans. That was really, really interesting. As some of you may know, in this country now, your retirement is not guaranteed, right? Retirement savings is not guaranteed. Hardly anyone has access to a pension anymore. So being able to help employees of companies save for themselves, which we all have to do, is really critical. And I found passion behind that. I found helping people, understand the market and save for their retirement. I found, not to be too dramatic, but I found some purpose in that. And, that is pretty much what I did. I did get, promoted within that field, within the retirement plan space. I got promoted, pretty consistently, changed jobs. We were acquired by a very large 401k provider called the Principal Financial. And I was kind of at a crossroads here in Chicago after 11 years in the retirement plan space. Chicago is not exactly a mecca for retirement planning or retirement, the 401k industry. So I wanted to change. I wanted to move into a different area of the financial services world. And I found a job at Morningstar through some people I knew who I had crossed paths with in the past. And it was a completely different area of financial services. I was head of operations and client service for a managed account platform, which might mean nothing to you out there on the phone, but it's basically a platform that advisors use to find investment strategies for their clients. And it was a completely different world for me. I like to say that Google was my best friend. I Googled everything. I was completely out of my comfort zone, but I learned so much. I ended up moving roles a bit at Morningstar and getting promoted. And I stayed at Morningstar for about 9 years, a little over 9 years. And I wanted, more of a challenge. I felt like I had plateaued a bit in my career, and I wanted to unplateau my career. So we worked pretty closely with Envestnet. I knew people at Envestnet, and I moved over to Envestnet. So actually, my entire career has been spent within about 10 city blocks here in Chicago. But I changed my commute by about 2 blocks and started at Envestnet about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. And, yet in a different area of the financial services marketplace where I deal with asset managers all the time. So these are folks like mutual funds and ETFs, folks like Vanguard and BlackRock and thousands of asset managers that I'm responsible on our platform. And it's an exciting role. I deal with every day is different, basically, and I love that. And I call it a little bit of air traffic control, because you're lucky enough to see the big picture. You're lucky enough to see kind of where you fit in and all the moving parts, and directing all of those moving parts, quite frankly, is what I find engages me. So when I look back at the past 23 years or so, I've been in client-facing roles. I've been in, telephone support roles. I've been in more operational roles. I've been in management roles. And at the end of the day, I think it's critical that you find passion in something. And what I've found passion in is helping people, right? And in my job, it's knowing that at the end of the day, and my company is making life easier for advisors and helping advisors improve the outcomes for their clients. And that is what fuels me. And quite frankly, helping young people, as a mentor fuels me. Making introductions for people, helping people, figure out where they want to be in this very broad industry. That's what fuels me at the end of the day. And that you can find really in abundance in our industry. And I'll say one other thing. What I skipped along the way is that I had kids very early. Very early. I started having kids at 23, my two kids at 23. And I say that only because my career was much simpler way back then than it is now. And I think that in many ways, even though I was having kids so much earlier than my peers, and it was very difficult, in my 20s to have kids. Now at 45, my kids are out of the house, they're older. And my career, the demands on my career are on me through my career are pretty substantial. So I'm lucky in a way that I front loaded, if you will, that work of having kids. I know that doesn't happen in every case. And in my case, it really helped because I wasn't traveling. I had a much easier 9-to-5 job. So that is a very quick thumbnail of my path. I want to talk a little bit more about the industry itself, but before we do that, I do want to pass it over to Annie to give her version of her path that you could see it contrast with mine a little bit, and then we can pick up again when Annie's done. Annie.
Thank you, Esty. I love hearing that. I already know your background on it, but it just gets me all excited too. And the word passion that you use, it's so important to have in anything that we decide to do. And because we work so much, to have that in the industry that you're in, that I'm in, is it helps us just keep us motivated. So some similarities, some differences with SD. I actually knew I wanted to be in the investment management industry. I have two incredible role models. Both my parents were in the industry. My mom, a stockbroker, and my father had his own firm focused on retirement plans. So during the summers of my high school years, I would spend more with my father in the retirement area. And so when I got to a big university, I was able to take classes that were focused on 401k plans, if you can imagine. So very focused on what I wanted to do. And I was able to land a job at T. Rowe Price 3 days after I graduated, and moved right into a retirement plan services role for relationship management. So I had clients from day one, and definitely very young, 21 at the time. I moved quickly into more of a client-facing role in sales, and there was only 15 of us at T. Rowe Price. Compare that to hundreds and hundreds of individuals here who work in our client-facing and distribution roles. So only 15 of us. I was the only female, and was excited to jump in and work with clients and helping them to plan retirements or help with their 401k plans. For the next full 11 years, I lived out in San Francisco. I was from Baltimore, Maryland, and I lived out in San Francisco, helped us kickstart our office. I traveled around to every state and really covered every territory for T. Rowe. Truly enjoyed it. We had been expanding the teams, and was just at a high. I ended up meeting my husband, who was just starting his career, and we moved to a location that was a bit more difficult to do my role in. And so I begrudgingly left T. Rowe to truly throw myself into the state we were in, and also to support my husband's career. So I left Hero, and for about 10 years, I had two lovely children, and threw myself into volunteering and still being involved, but only a little bit in the investment industry. Kept a lot of good contacts, but really was doing a lot more for my family and raising my two children. My husband was building his career. I will say I was pretty antsy and ready to get back, and we moved back to Baltimore, where I happened to touch base with a bunch of people over here and jump back into the firm, and decided, since the retirement industry had changed quite a bit, I wanted to go into a little bit something different and a little more growth area for us, and went into the wealth management area, particularly the broker-dealer segment, and came in as an individual contributor and have been back for 5 years. I have now been recently promoted to head the entire segment, where I have 55 people on my teams, and am in charge for everything that's related to the broker-dealer and bringing in sales for that. The best part of my job today, and when I look back at that career, being here for a while, leaving and coming back, is that having the optimism and the persistence to follow in what I knew, the path that I wanted, and definitely a lot of mistakes made along the way, lots of bumps, but having the support of my family, having the support of many mentors and sponsors, and also just being in a very fast-changing industry keeps me on my toes and keeps me very interested, and the fun that we can have with the clients is really all the reasons why I stay in this industry.
Thanks, Annie. Yeah, it really can be fun. So it's funny how different our paths were. Even from you growing up wanting to be in this industry to me not even really knowing it existed. So I imagine, though, Annie, that coming back and getting into the swing of things was pretty challenging for you. Could you talk about what else, and maybe that's it, but if not, what you found to be one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome in your career?
I made it sound so easy, didn't I, Esty?
You did.
So a couple of things. Both Esty and I are in the financial industry. It is fast changing, like I said, whether it be regulatory changes, just dynamics, clients, how you interact. All of that comes into play, as well as just regular licenses that you need to take to stay ahead of it, to stay adaptable to the regulations of it. So being gone for that long, I did lose those licenses that I had to retake, which are a mandatory requirement and just something that just needs to be checked off, sort of like exams and various coursework that you have, but can be difficult to do, and you have to set time for it. In addition, not being, definitely very welcomed back, but it's also like you've been gone for so long. How are you coming into this role? And I've been here the whole time. What do you have that I don't? And so it did take a bit of proving that what I could bring to the table was something that was much more than just being gone from the industry, but actually an insight without being in the industry during some tough times, 2008, 2009, various years that people sort of lost some enthusiasm and momentum. Me coming in with this optimism and excitement of jumping into the industry, I think helped people to see that there was quite a bit more that we could do, particularly with our clients. So I look at the support I had. I did have an incredible sponsor that brought me back in. If you had looked on just a resume, I might not be considered for the position that I was given when I came in. Luckily, this sponsor saw beyond that and said, I know what you can do, and I'm going to put you in a position that you will need to figure it out. You will need to make the contacts, and you will need to get training on your own. But I'm putting you in this because I know what you can do. And having that sponsor, that's someone who really believes in you and sets you up for success, to me, was one of the key factors. So when I look at that, paying that forward, I think it's important whenever I have a a position open on my teams, any of the teams, I look beyond just a resume, and I look beyond as to what can this person do? What are they made of? What's their background? What drives them? And that to me is what's helpful to look at when anyone on the line who's looking to come into this industry, really into the industry, is to make sure that you're, well known outside of just your paper and connect with people along those lines, because that's going to help you to, whether it's the first job you get into and you stay in for the rest of your life, or whether it's many jobs you go through, finding those sponsors are important. That'll help you to keep moving forward.
So, I mean, so true. And it's advice I give all the time to people. This, like many other industries, it's a relationship industry. And it's very critical to maintain good relationships with people. Throughout my career, it's almost ironic how, certain people keep bubbling up, or certain relationships, even if you don't know that you're making a good impression on someone, I bet you are. And it's those types of things that, you never know. It's hard to quantify how those things might pay off for you down the road, or nurturing relationships, both folks, that are senior to you and folks that are, working their way up the ladder. Like I said, it's a relationship industry, and people who have the skill or can develop the skill of fostering and nurturing and growing relationships will definitely have an easier time finding success than otherwise.
And Esty, you made a great point. You said you were completely out of your comfort zone when you jumped into it in one part of your career. I'd love to hear more about that, because I think about people on the phone who might be looking at, well, that I'm not exactly fit, or again, looking at that, just that resume piece of paper, that's not going to help you to just get the job. How did you get out of your comfort zone? How did you push yourself? Were there people that helped you with that?
Yeah. So, luckily I'm not shy, and I ask a lot of questions, and I ask a lot of people a lot of questions. So, I knew I had to leave the retirement plan space. I knew I needed to learn something else. And luckily, I had someone who was fairly senior, who knew me in a prior role and knew that I was capable, that I was a fast learner. And so, luckily I was given a chance, whereas, Annie, to your point, my resume would, if I was a stranger sending in my resume, they probably wouldn't look at it twice. But because, I had proven myself in the past, I was given a chance. And, it wasn't easy, but it was, it was so fulfilling. And, I would say that it's also critical to take those risks in your career. It is hard to do. It's not easy, especially if you're someone like me that, is risk averse. I truly am. But it's very hard to really make a difference and really move the needle, so to speak, if you don't take any risks. And I say this all the time, but I promise you that the cure for fear of failure is to fail often. The more you fail, the less it bothers you, and the less you're afraid to then take a risk. And it becomes maybe not second nature, because I don't think it'll ever be second nature for me, but it loses its kind of hold over you, where you are too risk averse to move outside of your comfort zone. That's just critical to do. Don't you agree, Annie?
I do. And it's something that I do think it's a bit of a misconception about women in the industry generally, is that, will women generally say yes or raise their hand in this industry. And there is a bit misconception that they'll say no. Could be various reasons, whether it be family or that they don't have everything all laid out. 1, 2, 3. I know all of these qualities that is stated that you need to have for the job. And, I do think that's a bit of misconception, because I look at you, myself, many other women in this industry, as well as even my team members, giving them that confidence and support for them to be able to raise their hand, which they are today more so, and not having everything checked off, but that they know they can do it. That to me is really important. And what can we do to constantly encourage that? I think that's one of the key things. And I know you're taking off when you're mentoring people, myself as well, because this has been traditionally a male industry. And it's something that, women have been very successful at, and they've been not fearful as much, but more of like, I don't know if I could make it in that. And the more they see women in here doing really well, raising their hand, saying, I can absolutely do it all. I might do it a different way than a male or another female, but I'm going to lay it out and make sure that I am putting myself in the right position for career development. And to me, that's been wonderful to see, and I think we'll keep moving in the right path there.
Yeah. So we're getting a few questions. So I think I can consolidate into one here. One is a question as to what is the difference between mentors and sponsors, and if you don't have one, how do you get yourself to stand out and get a mentor or sponsor? So very briefly, a mentor can really be anyone that you look up to, that you feel you can learn from, right? Someone ideally senior to you, someone that, you feel you can learn from or you want to learn from. So, you can have mentors that don't even know they're your mentors, right? You can just observe, see how they act, and maybe model certain aspects of your behavior after them. They can be someone you meet with on a regular basis that acknowledges their role as mentor to you. A sponsor is something very different. And it's very common to have multiple mentors, but it is something special to have a sponsor. And this is someone who takes an active role in your career. Someone senior to you that guides you, that looks for opportunities, that helps you really develop, and almost takes you under their wing, and is going to watch out for you, see something in you, and do what they can to bring you along to further your career. I'd say sponsorship is much more active and much more involved than simple mentorship. And, and Annie, I want you to opine on this too, but as to how to get noticed or how to get yourself to stand out, part of what we've been saying, I think, is applicable. Doing a good job is the baseline, right? Doing a good job, showing up, working hard, that is the absolute baseline. I won't even bother getting into that more. But then, asking questions. Senior folks, I love it when someone I don't know stops in my office and wants to chat or put some time on my calendar. I think there's a perception that people are too busy, they don't want to help. People do want to help. And if they don't want to help you, then fine, you don't need them. People want to help. They want to know that you're engaged. They want to know that you're curious and that you care and are ambitious and motivated. And 9.5 times out of 10, when you display those characteristics and put yourself forward, you will be noticed and someone will take you under their wing. Annie, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, so well said, Esty, all of that. I'd add just if you're thinking about really this industry or anything and you're trying to find that connection, I doubt that you will find anyone that doesn't say yes to a coffee or a meet and greet for 30 minutes and I've never said no to anyone, and no one has ever said no to me, and I've had many of them. I remember, recall I told you about coming back to this industry and the sponsor that I did have. who brought me back. There were many people who did not think I could do a good job. And as much as he brought me back, he said, "You've got to figure this out on your own." And I had so many meet and greets with so many people to say, like, what's your role? What are you doing? I was trying to find some sort of interesting path to go down, which again was different from what I was used to on the retirement side, because I really wanted to come in and just stretch myself. And so nobody said no to me. It was like meet and greet, tell me about you, and people do love to talk about themselves. So you're gonna get anyone saying no to that. And treat them to a coffee or a breakfast or whatever. And you're gonna learn a lot. What you're gonna learn also is what you don't want to do. And you're going to learn, like, that's interesting. And then the last thing you should ask them, if you're talking to someone that you admire or that you're connecting with, to say is, I'm interested in XYZ. Is there someone else you recommend that, could shed some light on this, or that could help me as I keep going down this path? And then, so then you just got this great connecting paths of all these different people that are meeting. And the second thing I'd say after that is always follow up. Because one thing that I've noticed on the ones that are really good, that are ambitious, that want to come into perhaps one of my teams, is that they have that meet and greet, and then I recommend somebody, and then they follow up as to that meeting, what it went like, what they learned, what they're doing next. And so to me, that's someone who listened, that's someone who cared, they're ambitious, they're persistent, and I'm looking forward to connecting with them again. So that would be my recommendation if you're wanting to get out there, and whether do you find a mentor or a sponsor, that'll fall into place. But just start as questions and make some connections.
Yeah, so true. We have just a few more questions, and then we are past our time, so we'll stick it out here for another 5 minutes or so, because we are getting questions, and I do love that. So a couple more questions. Advice to someone who has lost their drive to perform, and handling difficult people who cause barriers in your career path. And both of them, both of these questions, I think, are somewhat related. It's some kind of barrier, whether that's in your own head, that you just don't have the drive anymore, or external. Someone who either you perceive as being a barrier to you, or is actively being a barrier to you, the latter of which is pretty terrible. But it happens, right? So, in both cases, I would say the worst thing you can do is just sit back and do nothing and wait for, someone or something to come along and fix your problem. You have to resolve that. And maybe that's applying for a different job within your company. Maybe that's leaving your company and applying for a job somewhere else. Maybe that's changing industries altogether. But ultimately, it is up to you to really blaze your path forward. And we've talked about, folks that can help you, mentors, sponsors. But at the end of the day, even a mentor or sponsor can't do it for you, right? So you're going to have to make that decision as to, where you find your passion, how you find it, and maybe you don't find passion, but you find something about your job, a challenge that gets you up in the morning, that makes you feel accomplished. And knowing when you need to make a lateral move or make a move somewhere else, get out of your current job, that happens to all of us. And recognizing when that's necessary to either further your career or get out of a bad situation, that's key. Annie, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I'll give 3 bits of advice there quickly. Number 1, be honest with yourself. There are going to be moments when you doubt, as Essie said, and that you can't succeed. You'll lose the drive, the energy, and be honest in what you can do and want to do. Number 2, I'd say concentrate on your strengths instead of your weaknesses. When you hit those barriers, you immediately start looking at, I don't have this, I need this. Concentrate on your strengths. All of us have it, and all of us have different strengths, and you will complement a team or a job. You have to concentrate on. Number 3, the best bit of advice that I've ever heard from my parents and from other people is to trust your gut. We all have it. Sometimes we don't listen to it, And I think it's important that we all go to the last decision, whether it be taking a new job or leaving a job, where sometimes you will have to do that. But come back to what your core is and what you believe in, and you will find the right path.
That is a great point, Annie. And I think that comes with it. This is all kind of it could be a virtuous cycle, right? When you challenge yourself and you accomplish whatever it is that you challenged yourself with it, what happens is that you gain confidence in yourself. And that confidence is what allows you, or part of what allows you, to know your worth and to, as Annie said, be honest with yourself and trust your gut. When you're in a bad situation, let's be honest, sometimes we get into bad situations that are, no fault of our own, but it's that confidence and knowing your value that helps you decide, this is not for me, I need to move on, or I need to do something. I need to chart my course in a different direction. And I think, as you keep challenging yourself, overcoming the challenges, maybe sometimes you fail, but you learn that you survive that failure and you keep going. All of this over time, it helps you develop this very solid core of confidence that will help you through many, to continue the ship analogy, will help you through many storms. Okay, so that's critical. So we have 3 minutes here, and so I'll get one more question. Actually, 2 more questions here. Let's see. Opportunities for international students, and how do I find a good company to grow in? So there's lots of good companies out there. I would look for a company, that has a strong brand, that has a lot of opportunity, where, you can sample different roles. Sometimes big companies are good because they have just a host of different roles that you can, move around in. Sometimes small companies are very good because you end up wearing multiple hats and learning a lot and learning how to be scrappy and entrepreneurial, and you stand out more. So, there's advantages to both. I would just look for a company that has a good reputation, that you think you can find a home in for a while and make a difference in. Annie, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, and I'd say even for the international question, you think about our wealth management industry, SD, there's so much more expansion or opportunities even outside the U.S. And speaking for T. Rowe Price, we are expanding the most outside of the U.S. actually, and have quite a few roles open. And so I even have a few team members who might transfer to our London office or Hong Kong to expand and be able to then come back. And so I do agree with you. I think on the larger companies in the wealth management industry, you will find many opportunities of expansion outside of just being in the U.S. So definitely look on websites, look out there, ask some people about it, because there's quite a few positions that you could jump in on.
Great point. All right. Well, I think that is that we've come to the end of our time now. So once again, Annie, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone on the phone. Yeah, this has been fun. I'm glad so many of you asked questions. I'm glad so many of you dialed in. I wish you all the best of luck. Reach out to us on LinkedIn if you'd like. Start building those networks. And I wish you all the best of luck in your career as you all move forward. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, ladies. That was awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Have a great day.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for attending today's Why Have a Career in the Wealth Management Industry webinar. The session has now concluded.